Hello, welcome again, my friends, and thank you for joining me again today. Today, I'm going to be talking about the recent United Nations General Assembly resolution on rebuilding of Ukraine, on compensation for destruction by Russian Federation of Ukrainian territories, and also I will also talk a little bit about the G20 summit in Bali, Indonesia. Okay, let's go. The only thing I'm not so happy about in terms of this resolution is that it applies to only one specific conflict. And the reason why many countries in the global south has been very uninterested in the whole Ukrainian-Russian debacle has been because of the one-sided nature of the whole thing. When I say one-sided nature, I meant it will appear as if nothing else is happening in other parts of the world. We have so many other conflicts, and I think all these conflicts also need to be compensated for the destruction. The countries that were affected should be compensated for the destruction of their territory and infrastructure. At the same time, it will appear that most of the countries that supported this country, the resolution, or the sponsors of the resolution itself, were countries that they themselves could be accused or could be found guilty of destroying other countries. And as such, it is good that the resolution passed, but at the same time, for there to be an equitable society or equitable world and a fair world and a truly fair world order, then it should be that particular resolution should apply to all other conflicts and situations whereby there is need for compensation. The one-sided nature of this could be seen from the, for example, okay, let's have a look. Recently, I think a few years ago, 2 years ago, you could find this on Google anyway. If you need to confirm this, Namibia seek compensation from Germany for killing about 60 to 70,000 of our people or citizens. The German government accepted liability, and they offer 1 billion, which is an insult, really, because if you're talking about 60 to 70,000 people, you have to think about the other people that will be affected, the fathers that were killed, their children, how that affected their life, and so on and so forth. But in case of Ukraine, I very much doubt they will say the same thing. They'll be trying to claim a lot more money. And the country that supported this, another country would be, you could say, is Australia. Australia is a country that anyone that has studied the country itself could be said to be guilty of destruction or destruction and probably maybe close to genocide, not exactly genocide, but close to it, of the and killings of the Aboriginals, the original owners of the land of Australia. In fact, they were not even allowed to be citizens of Australia until the 1980s. So they should also be compensated. What is good for one person should be good for the other person also. You also have the issue of many former colonies of the United Kingdom, of the British Empire. There's no doubt, and make no mistake, that the British government or the British government or the Britain as a country today cannot say they actually looted or at least stolen from this territory that were colonies then. They should also be compensated for destruction to their way of life, the society, and breakdown of law and order in those countries. Then I think Korea also should be compensated them, and sorry, Japan should compensate Korea, and China should be compensated by Japan also. And the United States should also compensate Libya for the bombing in 1980s by the former President Ronald Reagan, because they went to the country and bombed the country and killed some people. And since then, no compensation, nothing happened. In fact, if we should go on about the number of conflicts or number of countries whereby the United States has intervened that resulted in the loss of innocent life, it is in several numbers, not just one or two. We could be talking about Vietnam. You could talk about Syria, whereby the United States still have territory without being, and basically they just occupy part of the country without being invited, and they are currently being accused of looting the country's oil, which the oil belongs to the people of Syria. So they take the oil via Iraq, and then we don't know where the oil goes to. So who is getting the money for the oil? So Syria today either abstain or didn't bother to come out to vote, and some actually voted against the resolution. Of course, the resolution passed, but some countries did not bother voting or abstain because they knew at the end of the day this resolution has no legal basis. Yemen should be compensated by Saudi Arabia and its subordinates in the bombing and continued destruction of Yemen and killing of innocent Yemeni citizens. France should compensate people of Algeria for killing of so many Algerians during the War of Independence and destruction of the country also. So there we have it. Yes, it is good. The United Nations should make resolutions or make it compulsory for all nations that destroy other countries, either physically in terms of infrastructure or in terms of the people or other area that has resulted in some sort of loss, economic or cultural loss, to be compensated by the aggressive part, the party that they invaded them, or where there could be time to be the aggressor. Not recently, it was only until 1980 or 1990 that the Zimbabwe and Namibia became independent. This country has not been compensated for the loss of life. People died while fighting for independence in these countries, and same thing could be said of Angola. They should be compensated by Portugal because they never invited the Portuguese or the other the British or the Boers to come to them, or the Dutch to come to their countries. So there were people that were killed. Okay, Namibia, Germany has already agreed to compensate them, but so far they've not agreed to the terms of the compensation. And I believe Poland is trying to seek compensation from Germany also for destruction during the Second World War. Yeah, maybe it's a good start that countries start paying for what they should not, for the maybe crime, or okay, they've not been found guilty in a court of law as being criminal. In terms of civil laws, they should be made to pay for these incidents or cases. Okay, let's move on. And also, I think I said in one of my previous videos that the current mobilization by the Russian Federation may not be enough unless the war is coming to an end very soon, because obviously people will die, some people will get injured, so they will need to do more, maybe another mobilization sometime in the future. And I suspect because of this, the Russian president, Mr. Putin, signed a decree that now make it possible for the citizens of Russia that has got nationality of another country to be mobilized into the Russian army. He also signed a decree that allows foreigners to enlist into the Russian armed forces, which I suspect is a way of being able to recruit, people from maybe actually it could be another way of actually having people, Belarusian soldiers fighting under Russian flag, or Syrian soldiers fighting under Russian flags, and other nations, like maybe North Korea or Eritrea or Ethiopia, in East Africa, to be able to fight under the Russian flag, rather than to have them as mercenaries. So it is also another way of actually increasing the number of Russian troops or manpower, because being such a big country, okay, yeah, they might have a lot of soldiers, but they still need to secure their borders, and it's a vast territory. 10% of the world landmass. It's huge to man and monitor. So they need soldiers to do all this, or people to do this. So there we have it. G20. G20. I've seen a few videos of the Russian representative, or videos on the G20 summit, and I noticed that yes, there might be some. Most of the Western Bloc might not be interested in meeting the Russian representatives, but at the same time, many other countries met with the Russian foreign minister, and I believe even a member of NATO, France, the French president spoke to Mr. Lavrov on the sidelines of the recently concluded G20 summit. One thing that is not really clear, it looks like this year's G20 summit will not have a draft agreement or statement at the end, simply because the Western members of G20 want to turn the G20 into another round table or summit to condemn Russia. Really, it is getting a bit boring, really. And like I've said in my previous video, and like many people are already saying, there are so many other conflicts in the world, but it looks like because this war is in the West, it is being brought to the attention of everyone else, as Indian Prime Minister said, no, not the Prime Minister, the Foreign Minister, he said the Western's problem is always been made to everyone's problem, but other people's problem is not their problem. In other words, Ukraine is a war that is in the West. It is the headache of the Europeans. Fair enough, because it is very close to the borders. But these countries that are attending this summit, or UN or other bodies, international bodies, they've also got conflict in their background. They have wars in their background. They have issues in their background, and really, it is not on top of their priorities. So really, because of this, we're not gonna be having a very constructive statement following the G20 summit, because some countries want to turn into another summit for discussion about Russian and Ukraine war, or to condemn Russia, which many countries from the other side or other part or other members of the summit, such as Saudi Arabia, Turkey, China, and a few other countries that are not really willing to do. They're not interested in condemning Russia, and they've not done so, and I don't think they'll be doing this again at this summit. So neither is Brazil or South Africa going to condemn Russia at this summit. They've not done that in the past, so they will not do it again. And so we're not going to be having a test agreement. Okay, there might be a majority agreement, because obviously you have the Western countries plus the EU as members, which, by the way, it is just like the FIFA World Cup. They are majority, even though they are not in the majority when it comes to population. But this is geopolitics or global politics. It is dominated by one part of the world, and we all know where that part of the world is. As you can see on the world map, they make that part of the world looks bigger, and some part of the world which is actually bigger looks smaller. So there we have it.